We continue with the fourth chapter of the book of Yechezkel. Yechezkel is in the midst of God telling him that unfortunately, right, this is all pre the destruction of Beit HaMikdash. Yechezkel is in the Golah in Bavel, but he's being told, unfortunately, about the destruction that's going to happen into the people of those still in Israel, Yerushalayim, but he has to talk to the people of Bavel about trying to get them to do what they need to do. So we continue chapter 4. So Yechezkel is told here to take a brick and put it in front of you, a brick or some sort of clay tablet or something, and carve onto it an image of the city of Jerusalem. V'natata aleha matzor. Don't just carve a image of Jerusalem, but then carve around it a siege. Uvanita aleh dayek v'shafachta aleh solela, and build towers and cast a mound against it. V'natati aleh machanot v'sim aleh karim saviv. Pitch camps against it and bring battering rams all about it. So here, Yechezkel, to a certain extent from afar, is playing out, as it were. He's drawing into life what's going to happen disastrously to the city of Jerusalem, to Yerushalayim. And take an iron plate, and take this iron plate, it's like an iron wall, and place it between yourself and the city. And maybe this is because Yechezkel represents, in a sense, God. He's the one who's building these things. He's the God, the same way God is doing it, but God is not going to be destroyed. Yechezkel is not going to be destroyed. The Jews who are in Bavel are not going to be destroyed by this. V'hachinota et panecha eleha v'ayta v'matzor v'tzartala oti lebeit Yisrael. And look towards it. Look towards the siege. Because the city is going to be surrounded, and this is supposed to be a sign, an omen for the house of Israel as to what's supposed to happen. So the first thing, and Yechezkel does a lot of acting, a lot of role play, maybe would be the best word to use for it, as God's emissary and messenger. And this is one of the places where we see it, and we'll see it again now in a second. Now God says to him, go and lie down on your side, hasmoli, on your left side. He has to lie down. He wasn't a back sleeper, wasn't a belly sleeper. Lie on your left side. The Samta et avon Beit Yisrael alav. And your lying on the left side should bear the punishment that's happened to the house of Israel. The left is, in a sense, is also in some way supposed to be facing the north. The kingdom of Israel is further north. The kingdom of Yehuda was the one that was further south. So commentaries discuss how that is. Of course, you could face. You could be on your right and face north, but mispar hayamim asher tishkav alav tisat avonam, and you will lie there on your side for as many days as the for this number of days that will sort of soak up. You will bear their punishment. Now, of course, Kingdom of Israel by this time has already been exiled. It doesn't exist anymore. And God continues, and I'm going to impose upon you a number of days in order for you to bear their iniquity, to bear their sin. And what are those days? 390 days. V'nasata avon Beit Yisrael. For 390 days, you have to lie there on your side, and that's going to, with it, that's sort of symbolic, and you're bearing the punishment of the house of Israel. Of course, many of the commentaries say this is something he did in a dream, something he did in the imagination with God. He didn't lie there for 390 days on his left side. V'chilita et eila v'shachavta al tzidcha hayimani. Once you finish lying on your left side for 390 days, then you're going to lie for another 40 days on your right side. For 40 days, 1 day for each year. That is the sort of the command that I'm giving you to lie on your side. Very strange thing. Hey, how does this happen? What does it even mean? It's very difficult. Why these days? 390. and 40. The best explanation I've heard of them is, if you go back into the book of Shemot, is the amount of time that the Jews were in Egypt was 430 years. I think we're told that in the 12th chapter of the book of Shemot, if I'm not incorrect. It's somewhere certainly around that. And so here, if you add up to 390 and the 40, you get to 430. And maybe, right, God took the Jewish people out of Egypt to go to Israel to build a great society, a moral society, a society that's built on tzedakah, mishpat, on righteousness, on justice, on kindness, and Bnei Israel haven't done that. And so that's why the total of punishment adds up to 430, because it's sort of the undoing of God. You've gone back to Egypt and the corruption that it stood for, with slavery and the horrors and genocide, etc., etc. I think the Abarbanel is the one who begins that, who has that idea. Continuing verse 7, and then with bared arm, with your arm bare, you will set your face towards the besieged Jerusalem and prophesy against it. But I'm going to put cords upon you. I'm going to sort of tie you down. So you can't turn from side to side until you complete your days of siege, right? There's nothing you can do about it. You're tied down. This means sort of like Yechezkel symbolizing God. It's like God has tied himself down. God is not going to intervene. God is not going to send a prophet to intervene. We're just going to watch the results of what has happened or will happen to Yerushalayim, to its inhabitants, to the Beit HaMikdash, all of that destruction which we've spoken about before. But it's hard to understand exactly how this role play is doing, but that's some of the ways that it's understood. Now, if you ever go up to the grocery store and you see Ezekiel 4:9, it's bread and other things. So it's from this verse, Ezekiel 4:9. Go and take wheat, usorim, and barley, uful, v'adashim, v'dochan, v'kusmim, v'natato tam b'kli echad, v'asito tam lecha lilachem. So take barley and wheat and beans and lentil and millet, and right here, this translation is emmer. Okay, put them in one vessel. I think that's the name. The reason why bread is named that way is, right, it's all of these different nutrients or whatever that are baked into this one bread. And you're going to eat this bread for 390 days. And the amount that you will eat will be 20 shekels a day. This you shall eat in the space of a day. And you will drink water by measure, a sixth of the hin in the space of a day. So it's just stopping there. It's hard to understand what these measurements are, but these measurements are very, very small measurements. Right? Yechezkel's playing out what's going on. The water is sort of like 2 cups of water. The bread is a very small amount of bread. The people in Yerushalayim are starving. They're hungry. Now, don't tell the people Ezekiel 4:9 about Ezekiel 4:12. Eat it as sort of a barley bread or a barley cake, and you bake it on human excrement before their eyes. There are those who explain that excrement, well, it wasn't usually human excrement that was used, that somehow it contains a fuel in it, that if you light them, I guess it has to be that the excrement is already dry and hard by then. I am not an expert in this, although I do pick up a lot of dog stuff. This is the way that it sort of is understood. But, don't ask the people at Ezekiel 4:9 if you have that bread in your area, if this is how they bake their bread. Vayomer Adonai, continuing in verse 13, this is how Bnei Israel are going to eat their bread. They're going to eat it impure among the nations to which I will banish them. They will be eating, right, bread. They're going to eat impure bread. There's nothing about the millet and the lentils and the beans, but the idea that it's being cooked on top of human excrement, even though obviously the human excrement isn't in the bread, it's being used as some sort of fuel. But Yechezkel doesn't like this. Omar, and I said, Aha, Adonai Elohim, Hine nafshi lo mitum'ah, unevelo trefa lo achalti minurai v'yadata v'lova befi basar pigul. God, and Yechezkel says to God, he hasn't complained about lying on his left side. He hasn't complained about lying on his right side. He hasn't complained about baking the bread. But you want me to eat this? No, I can't do this. I've never defiled. I haven't eaten anything that's not kosher. That's a treifa from my youth until now. Nor has any fouled flesh entered my mouth. And interestingly, we think about this. We're far from being there, but in the book of Daniel and his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, in the first chapter of the book of Daniel, they are brought in with the group who is exiled in the year 597, which is the group that Yechezkel is with before the destruction of Beit HaMikdash, and they're brought to the palace of Nebuchadnezzar, and there they are fed all types of food. And Daniel protests. He says, I can't eat this food. This is not kosher. This is not what we're allowed to eat. And he requests to be on like a vegetarian or vegan diet. And they say, okay, as long as you don't get weaker. And that's the one place in the Tanakh where we see somebody standing up for kashrut, somebody saying, I'm not going to eat something that's not kosher. Now, we don't have so many stories about stuff like that because usually the Jews are in Israel. So the idea of having to eat food that wasn't prepared in the along with the Jewish dietary law is not something that's a very, very live issue. So I wonder if, Yechezkel here in this sort of same sort of milieu, even though this is more symbolic, it's not real, it makes sense within that background, in that context. Continuing verse 15. So God said, okay, use cow dung instead of human excrement. Prepare your bread on that, right? Comes from a cow is kosher, etc., etc. So again, mortal man, right? You're just a man. You're not the Ma'aseh Merkava. Hineni shover matei lechem b'Yerushalayim v'achlu lechem b'mishkal u'v'da'aga u'mayim b'mishura u'v'shimamon yishtu. So he says, you human being, son of man, I'm going to break the staff of bread in Yerushalayim. They will eat bread by weight and anxiety and drink water by measure and har, right? They're going to have so little of bread, even bread and water, let alone something else. And why is this? When they lack bread and water, they will stare at each other, heartsick over their iniquity. They will see everything that they have done wrong because they're going to have so little, and they're going to be looking at each other, and they're going to be worried, and they're right. There might not be so many mirrors in Yerushalayim, but they're going to see each other, and they're going to see how disastrous and how weak and how terrible they look from the little bit of water and the little bit of food that they have. So here we, again, these are difficult chapters that Yechezkel is bringing us back to the time of the before the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash and some of the horrors therein. He's symbolically showing it, and it may be that he's symbolically showing it because God is feeling it, and he's God's representative to an extent. He's watching it from afar, the same way the Jews who have been exiled to Babel in the year 597 will watch it and witness it and understand it from afar, but they are not going to be the ones who it happens to. And we'll continue in chapter 5 tomorrow. Chapter 5 is actually a continuation. Really, 4 and 5 are really one unit, and we'll see 6 and 7 are going to be one unit. So this chapter is one of the places where the chapters get in the way of understanding the full sort of picture of what is being told to us in this prophecy that is coming to Yechezkel. But we'll continue with it thus tomorrow.